Okay, hi everyone. We've got people coming into the attendee room now, I can see. So I'm just going to give you a minute just to come on in. One stage, you're going to have your permissions upgraded in a minute, which means that you'll be able to share your cameras and share your sound. So if you would like to, if you want to switch your cameras on or even just your mic so you can get involved today, I'd really encourage it because it'd be great to kind of, it's quite an interactive session, so it'd be really good to get your feedback as we go through. So for those of you that have joined, so Kathy, Russell and Kate, I've seen that you've joined via Zoom. We've got quite a few joining via the website today, so I know those of you that have joined via the website won't be able to switch on your cameras and sound, but for those of you that are on Zoom, if you'd like to switch on your cameras and sound, please do, or feel free to kind of input in the chat box as we go. So we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to today's event, which is Facing Challenges with Confidence. I'm Emily Plaistow. I've met most of you before, but for those of you that I haven't met before, I'm the Learning Experience Lead at CITF. And you might have seen me on some other events, but just to give you a little bit of background about me, I come from a learning and development background, so have kind of trained across multiple different industries, predominantly specialising in technology and finance, but mainly I've done a lot of training and facilitation around soft skills and development, and some of the things I've specialised in is mindset, and I've done a lot of work one-to-one with people previously on building confidence, and that can be through kind of mentoring, coaching, but also a lot of kind of formal training. So I'm excited to see some faces that some names that I'm starting to recognise today, and I hope you'll come with me kind of on this journey today. So we've got 45 minutes. There'll be some time for Q&A at the end. But if you have questions as we go through, and I know sometimes they kind of pop up as we kind of go through, please do add them into the chat box or the Q&A box as we go, and then we can reflect on them as we go, or we can do those at the end. Like I said, you've all got permission to be able to put your mics on, so you can absolutely stick your sound on, so that you can interact today. So if you've got a question as we go through and you want to interrupt me, just say your name, where you come from, then that's absolutely fine. There will be a poll at some point just today, so it'd be great for you to get involved with the poll, and it's kind of a reflective poll, so it'll give you a chance to kind of have a look at kind of do some self-reflection as well. So it's not just about the results, it's about very much looking at kind of self-reflection. As always, just to remind you all that today is being recorded, so please be mindful that obviously the content will go up on the website. If anyone you know misses anything or would like to have joined in today, then obviously you can let them know the recording will be on later on today. So without further ado then, I can see lots of you coming in, we are going to get started. Like I said, questions as we go through, just fire them across to me. So today we're going to be looking at facing challenges with confidence, and we'll be looking at breaking it down into kind of different segments. So, oh, brilliant, always good when you can't move your slides, there we go. So today we're going to be looking at covering what is confidence, what impacts our own confidence, and this is, like I said, a really self-reflective session, so you'll probably need a pen and paper to hand, and there'll be lots of time throughout for you to really reflect on what stuff looks like for you. We'll be understanding some techniques that we can use to help us feel more confident in those challenging situations that we're facing, and then we'll be looking at how we can actually apply these techniques, because it's great talking about it all in theory, but how can we take away what we learn and apply it? Like I said, there'll be a poll as we go through, and there'll also be some feedback at the end as always, and we'll get some time for Q&A in, which is obviously really important. So without further ado, the first thing I want us to think about is this question, is how would you describe confidence? Confidence looks and feels very different for everybody, but how would you describe it? So if you want to add that to the chat box now, if you've got any thoughts on how would you define confidence, please do, or just think about writing down that definition. What is confidence to you? And it'll probably be quite different for everyone. And chat box is very quiet, guys. I'm giving you another minute to think about it. Okay. Okay, so the definition around confidence then is being confident is around knowing that you can handle the emotional outcome of whatever you're going to face. And I want to really focus on that emotional part, because that is the thing with confidence. It's controlled by us. So we feel like it's controlled by the situations, the environment, but it's not. We are completely in control of our own confidence. Confidence is belief in yourself. It's belief that you can deliver that program on time. It's belief that you can get your team to respect you and deliver your objectives on time. It's a belief that you can learn that new piece of technology. And once you get rid of that kind of barrier that you're building, this confidence, saying I can't do something, or I'm nervous about something, or I'm scared about trying something, it's a barrier. It forms a barrier in front of us. And that barrier blocks us from achieving so many things. So it's so important for us to think about, when we're talking about confidence, remembering that it's an emotion and that it's belief in ourselves, it's self-belief. So the most important thing, and the thing we're going to get down to first of all, is understanding what the kind of detail is behind that confidence. So what impacts your confidence the most? Because we can say we're nervous or we're scared about something, but ultimately behind all of that, there's a factor usually that influences our confidence levels. So I want you to think about the last time, and we're just going to bring up a poll to think about this, to help you with some of your self-reflection. I want you to think about the last time you were perhaps in your personal life or at work, and you were feeling scared or nervous or feeling less confident than you would like to be. I want you to think about what that looked and felt like. And then I want you to think about kind of digging deeper behind that. What was that situation? What were the factors behind it that were affecting your confidence? So you can see we've got a poll now on the screen. I'd encourage you all just to fill it in. We'll obviously give it a little minute, and then when we've got enough results, we can share. You can do this anonymously, guys, so this isn't to catch anyone out. I just want you to think about what were those factors surrounding it. So was it that you were scared of making a mistake? Oh, look, we've got the results. Perfect. So I can see here that, oh, we've got change of results there. Okay, so worry of failure being a big one. We've got, okay, let's end the polling, let's have a look. So the worry of failure, feeling underprepared, that's a really big one. And we're going to pick up on some of these later and carry them on. A common one actually, being judged by others. That comes up as a really popular one if you ever search kind of any factors that influence confidence. And an interesting one is being in a conflicting situation. Thank you. We will end that polling. So what's so important is for us to think about is that there are various factors, and they'll be different for everyone when we're looking at confidence, but that ultimately most of the situation isn't within our control, but a lot of the elements that make us feel nervous, make us feel scared, a lot of those barriers actually are within our control and are something we can look at. So I'm going to take you on to looking at a tool that isn't, well, it's not necessarily a tool, it's a different way of thinking. And we're going to have a quick look at this. And it's around being our performative selves. So you can see on a screen, now you've got kind of various different circles in front of you, okay? So by all means, I'm going to explain these because these might look a little bit confusing. But ultimately, how I want you to think about this is that these are different layerings of yourself. So we're going to focus on the inner circle to begin with. And like I said, it's not necessarily a tool, but it's a different way of thinking. Let's look at this true self. What does it mean to be your true self? And this is sometimes some self-reflection. Being your authentic or real self. That is what this means, being the most honest aspect of you. This lies at the very center of everybody. And this is when we are most comfortable, when we are most ourselves, when confidence shouldn't even be an issue because we are just us, not having to think or filter anything. So what is your true self? So I'll give you an example of mine, and maybe you can start thinking about your own. When are you your true self? So I am my true self when I'm at home with my husband, Not even when I'm with my kids, because when I'm with my kids, I've got a parenting hat on and I'm having to think about my reactions and, how I voice things and how I word things and being responsible. But when I'm with my husband and I'm in my house, which I've grown to become my kind of safe sanctuary during lockdown, perhaps on a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon when I'm just me, I could be in comfy clothes with no makeup on and not having to think about what I look like or not having to think about how I respond to something because it's my husband and he's used to me. So I want you guys to have a think. And if you'd like to turn your sound on and share this, I'd be like really grateful to kind of hear some of your perspectives. But if not, maybe you want to add a few notes to the chat box. But when are you your true self? What does that look like? And just have a little think about what that feels like. It's so important to recognize this. So emotional self-awareness is the ability to be able to recognize and understand our own emotions. And people with this skill can identify small differences in their emotions. And therefore, you are aware of how your emotions impact your behavior, your performance, and your decisions. So emotional self-awareness is so key. And this is part of it, understanding when you're your true self. And that is usually when you're at your most comfortable. And whilst we'd love to be our true selves all the time, sometimes it's just not appropriate. So we have various different situations at work where we might have to be our performative self. So being your performative self is when you are being an elevated version of yourself. It's not acting. Acting is our outer circle. And as you can see by acting, the definition of acting is the art or occupation of performing fictional roles. So we don't want to pretend to be somebody else. That's not what we're looking to do here. We're not acting, we are being a better version of us. And by that, I mean, when you're at work, I'll give a situation, see if I can describe it. So if you think about you're at work and something's happened, perhaps you're a manager or you're within your team and something's happened and something's upset you and it's knocked your confidence. Perhaps someone's put you down or there's been a conflicting situation that came up earlier. Let's think about that and how that's impacting your confidence. Now, your true self might want to cry. It might want to retaliate and get into an argument, or it might want to just get up and go home and walk away. That might be your gut reaction, that kind of gut instinct. But what we have to do in those situations is be our performative self. We have to pretend that we are okay, and we have to pretend our way through the situation. So let's take that example then. Perhaps there's been a conflict within a team or conflicting information, confliction with your manager or someone within your team that reports into you, whatever position you might be in. I want you to think about how you would go from being your true self to your performative self. What are the key differences? So your true self, like I said, might react based on natural gut instinct and natural emotion. Your performative self would need to take a step back and analyze the situation. What is the best version of you that you need to be within that situation to overcome this challenge? When you take a step back and look at it as a role that you're playing, it gives you a different perspective. It allows you to look at something completely differently. You can have a really holistic approach of the situation, and that can help you build confidence. So rather than doing that gut reaction, think about how you can be your performative self. Perhaps the best version of you at that precise moment is to compose your words carefully, project them confidently, and to call that situation and put it into a different environment. So perhaps you need to step away and go into a meeting room. That would be a different version of you. That would not be acting on your true self, your gut emotion, but it would be an elevated version. So looking at this slide, I want you to do some considerations now. I'm just going to stop talking for a minute and give you some reflection time. I want you to think about, when are you your true self? And in what situations should you be your performative self? Really relate this to you and your role. When was the last time within your job, or perhaps even your personal life, where you've had to be your performative self, where you've had to push yourself out of what is your comfort zone, your inner bubble, and you've had to push yourself out there? This could be so much more real for people at the moment in their personal lives. I don't know about you, but I know coming out of lockdown, being indoors all the time, stepping out the doors to maybe go out for dinner, all of a sudden I feel a little bit anxious, and it throws me off a little bit because I've been so used to being indoors all the time and having my Friday nights in. So perhaps your confidence is around, your personal life and wanting to build that and finding that a challenge. Or perhaps it's around some big challenges that you're facing at work at the moment. Perhaps you've got imposter syndrome within your team. That's such a real topic that we're talking about all the time at the moment. There's various resources on the website where we've had events based around this. I'll share them with you afterwards. But it's so important to think about, okay, what if that's me at the moment? I've got imposter syndrome. How am I being my performative self and being the best version of me? Jonathan, you shared something. I'm just going to obviously read it out. But around being your true self, think of solutions and actions which are ideal, e.g. reflecting on the week of work ahead on a Sunday afternoon. I love this point that you've made, Jonathan. Okay, so you've said when it comes to midweek, the performative self might take a different action. So you'd have to, and we will address this more at the end, but thinking about perhaps your performative self on a Sunday night, how are you going to be you ahead of the rest of the week? But then perhaps having to, I just want to check this, Jonathan, but changing it up halfway through the week because of various situations that happen within the week. You absolutely might have to do that. So being your performative self isn't something you could necessarily sit and plan and prepare for. It's something that will have to change consistently as your week comes and where different challenges arise throughout the week. So you would absolutely have to edit that performative version of you and change this up throughout the week. And we'll look at some really key tips on how to cover this off in a minute. I also want you to think about how you can support yourself being a performative self. So I really like Jonathan's suggestion there around to say you were thinking about it on a Sunday night, and that's a great one to do. I know for me, I have kids, right? And I'm working at home at the moment. And at the moment, I tell you, when they go out the door to work, to school, I shut the door and it's almost like I physically put a different hat on and say, right, switch from mum mode, parent mode, whatever that is, I'm going to switch into my work mode now. And that was easier before because I was getting on a train and traveling into London. But now I'm not, I'm indoors and I'm having to be really strict with myself on that. And I almost have to take on a different persona. I'm not changing completely. I'm not acting. I'm still me, but I'm changing my persona and becoming work me. And it gives me a different confidence. It puts me into a different mindset and it gives me a different vibe. And it gives me a different kind of level of confidence when I'm perhaps having to pick up a more challenging situation, or perhaps before I delivered this today, for example, I might have felt a little bit nervous. And I certainly would have felt more nervous if I was in pajama bottoms and a hoodie doing this in full scale parent mode. So it's thinking about where your confidence comes from and how you can drive that. Okay. Oh goodness, right, there we go. Should be able to click over. Okay, so how can we be our performative selves? This touches on it a little bit, Jonathan. I think this will answer your question. How can we be our performative selves? And there's a few different things that we can take into consideration here. Visually, and it sounds like a silly one, right? But visually, this can have a huge impact on our confidence. I want you to think about visually what you look like when you're confident. So think about the last time you did feel confident in something. Really home in on what that looked like, what that felt like. How did you look? It's really interesting, but if we change our posture, and I did this in an exercise once, across a workshop that I was delivering. If you physically change your posture, you can project your voice differently without having to change anything vocally. So, for example, I got someone to once say a sentence and she was really nervous and it came out really quietly. I moved her posture, got her to stand differently, and then I asked her to say the same sentence. I didn't ask her to do it any louder or any differently. She automatically projected that with a more confident, assertive tone, and it was louder. Think about your posture and but also think about visually what gives you confidence. It might sound really silly, but we talk about, do we dress up to sit in our own living rooms on Zoom, for example? Some people feel more confident if they're wearing a shirt or a smarter top, or they've got a good face of makeup on, and whatever that is for you, that's fine, that's you. But think about what that looks like and think about what's important that gives you a bit of confidence. Remove distractions is another big one. And when I say distractions, I'm talking about hideaways. Everyone's got little hideaways. When I used to train, I used to get really nervous right at the start of my career. So if you're doing a presentation, this is the common one. If I had a pen in my hand, I would click it because I was nervous. That is not good. That's distracting, and that shows people that I'm nervous. Little ticks, little fidgets, little things that we do demonstrate our nerves and show people that we aren't feeling confident. Have you ever heard that phrase, fake it till you make it? It's such a corny phrase, but it's so true. The more we pretend we're confident, the more confidence actually comes to us. So let's just think about that then. What distractions have you got? I don't know if anyone wants to share those in the chat box, but have a think. What are your distractions? I once had someone that I worked with who used to go to client meetings, and she used to get so nervous that she used to plait her hair, and she would end up with a plait on the side of her head by the time she finished the client meeting. Now that is really distracting for the client and for anyone else in the meeting with her, but it was a nerve thing. So we discussed it and she agreed she was going to tie her hair up for every meeting so she couldn't fidget. Fidgeting is a really, really common sign of nerves, and it demonstrates nerves as well. And if you want your audience or whoever it is in that situation to believe you're feeling more confident, you need to take away the distractions and the nerves. You also need to make sure that you're not hiding behind anything either. So you're not avoiding something. Don't not attend something, or don't not do something because you're trying to avoid it. The phrase is eat your frog, I think it is. But think about, okay, if I'm going to be my performative self, how can I remove all the distractions, all the fidgeting, and also just get on and do it? But think about vocally then. So hard if you're feeling nervous sometimes. Perhaps you're having a one-to-one conversation, or you're talking to a customer, or you're in a meeting, or you're delivering a presentation, or perhaps in your personal life, you're feeling less confident about going somewhere and having to do something. Think about how you project your voice. Really consider what it is you want to say and be concise. Sometimes being prepared for this, so the two bullet points come hand in hand. The more prepared we are ahead of a challenge, the more confidence you have in what you're saying, and therefore you'll vocally deliver it in a better way. What's really important to remember is when you're delivering a message to somebody, the two most dominating aspects of that is visually and vocally. So you could say the same sentence, but you could say it with real enthusiasm, confidently, assertively, and visually you could be really in that conversation. You could be leaning in, your body language could be positive. If you slumped back, you were within yourself, perhaps you folded your arms and you had your head down and you murmured something, you could say the exact same thing and the message would come across completely differently. So it's so important to remember that visually and vocally are the most dominating factors here, and you really have to kind of feed that into what you're doing. Make sure you're prepared as you can be, and then leave influences at the door. Give yourself a pep talk if that works for you. You're going to be your performative self. Think about it. I always think about it as if I've said it before, like I'm visually putting on a hat. And that might sound really silly to other people, but for me, that works. So think about what works for you. Don't be influenced by any kind of negativity. Perhaps you're feeling really emotional because actually you felt like yesterday some of the team weren't very supportive of you with a particular situation. You're not feeling very confident about going into work today because actually you didn't feel like they were very supportive yesterday. You were upset by something someone said and how they handled the situation, and you're still holding on to that resentment. Pull that resentment and leave it at the door. That emotion is not going to help you. When you go into work that day, you need to hold your head up high, you need to push your shoulders back, and you need to go in without being affected by that emotion. You are the confident you, and you need to deliver that. And you just need to give yourself a time slot. I have to be my performative self until 12 o'clock. Then I'll go and have some downtime. It might be that you have to do a little pep talk at the door, and that is fine. What's so important to remember is this little equation. The situation and your response to it equals the outcome. You might have covered this in some kind of mindset training, or if you've ever talked about mindset in a bit more detail. But it's so important to remember this. Most of the time, you cannot control the situation. Whatever it might be that is making you feel less confident, that situation, you might not be able to alter that very much. You might be able to alter some very basic factors like where the situation is going to be held or something like that. But most of the time, the situation is not within our control. What is completely within our control, which takes us right back to the beginning when we talked about that emotional intelligence, is our response. We can control, you can control the response. And that is so important to remember. And I want you to think about the last time you had an outcome that you are unhappy with. I want you to reflect on that now. Think about the outcome and then think about what was the situation there and how did you respond to it? And thinking about that, was there any way that you could change your response which would change the outcome? Often this can become quite a vicious cycle because if we have a situation that has made us feel less confident and we've responded to it in a negative way, the outcome isn't what we wanted. And therefore that feeds back into that emotion of feeling unconfident, of feeling like we've got imposter syndrome, of feeling like we're not good enough. And it's this vicious cycle because then we go back into the next situation in the same way. You have to break the cycle and you have to think about what works for you. How can you inject more confidence into this? So as I promised, we're going to take some tips away with us today. So some tips of, and this is not a magic wand. We cannot wave a magic wand to be more confident overnight, but we can do certain things that help. So wherever possible, surround yourself with some positivity. This looks so different to everybody, and it's not always completely manageable. But wherever you can within your team, find someone that gives you that positive energy. Find someone that picks you up rather than pulls you down. Perhaps it's even within your personal life. Think about your aura and think about how that has an impact on you. I want you to think about other factors as well that can make you feel positive. Perhaps it's reading quotes in the morning, confidence quotes, or I often listen to, one of my friends does a podcast and I listen to her. She does mini kind of tips for the day to get you set up in the right way. Sometimes I listen to it while I'm brushing my teeth in the morning and getting dressed. I just have it on in the background. It's a really good way for me to start my day, thinking about what's going to go well, giving their day a positive spin just before I kind of get into it. Focus on learning. Now, this is the next point, and this is probably the most important one. This is a mindset piece. Switching something from having to be good, having to be confident, and taking it to this is a learning experience is very different. When we focus on it being a learning experience, we're not afraid to make mistakes. And I think that's really important to remember. It's okay to make mistakes. It's learning. And when we're learning, we do make mistakes and we learn from those. And that's the whole point of it. Everything we do should be a learning experience. And if something goes wrong, we just own it. We just say, that went wrong. Or, okay, that wasn't how it's supposed to go, but this is how we can make it better. Just treat it as you would, if you can, whatever that situation is, treat it as you would with any other kind of learning experience. It's okay to get it wrong. Think about what gets you in the zone. So being your performative self. And like I said, this can be down to what you wear, what you do in the mornings. So for me, I'll give a good example of this, is having a little bit of time out. When I was a manager, I was dealing with a really, really big team at one point. It was a brand new team. And I tell you, it came with a whole new set of challenges. Sometimes I would get really frustrated and feel really emotional about the situations. The best thing to do for me is to get up and walk away for a minute. 30 seconds of headspace gets me in a different zone. That might not work for everyone, but I know it certainly works for me. Taking myself away from that situation, reflecting on it for a moment, and then being able to go back allows me to gain some perspective and go back in feeling more confident. It might be that some people give themselves pep talks in the mirror in the morning. This might not work for you. You might want to laugh. That's fine. But whatever works for you. I'm jumping a point slightly, but over on the other side, we've got it's okay to be irrational, do what works for you. So there's been some studies around this, doing little things. So some people say, oh, we're superstitious, for example, but people believing that they have to do something every morning, or they have to do that because it's good luck, or they have to wear this top because it's their lucky top, whatever that might be, and it might sound completely irrational to everybody else. We actually perform better off the back of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that superstition is real. What it might mean is that our mind believes that we are going to perform better because we're wearing our favorite top, or because we're wearing our lucky earrings, or because we, driven a certain way to work, whatever that strange thing might be. It's okay because it's whatever works for you. The other one is accumulating small wins. So let's think about these small wins. Perhaps you've got a really, really, really big event that you're putting on, or a really big meeting. Break it down into small chunks. So think about, rather than the whole event has to be a success, what are the small successes within that? Breaking something down naturally makes something easier. We can divulge the information easier, and also small wins accumulate to us feeling like we've succeeded. And that's really important, because remember what we said is confidence is all down to our emotional belief. A lot of sports stars do this. So you might have seen a lot of kind of Olympic athletes, or sports stars, football teams even, they break it down into small chunks. Rather than saying, I've got to get 20 seconds faster, it might be, I've got to get 2 seconds faster by the end of next week. Then I've got to get 2 seconds faster by the end of that. And they just break it down into small amounts. Those small wins all build up, and it's called like marginal gains, I think it's called, but you can look at it and it all builds up into one kind of bigger picture. And the other one is don't procrastinate and avoid. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but let's not procrastinate or avoid. And that is so easily done. I know I avoid situations all the time that I'm not feeling confident about, but actually getting it done makes you feel better overall. So you've just got to think about, what do you need to do to get through that? So I'm just going to take you on to our final exercise. And this is for you guys. So pen and paper's at the ready. Step 1. I want you to think about when your next biggest challenging situation is that you can prepare for. So it might be that there's some other ones come up that you're feeling less confident about along the way, but think about when your biggest challenging situation is, and what is it that's making you feel less confident about it? So breaking it down and looking at those factors again. What thing within that, what factor is affecting your confidence within that situation? Just giving you all a minute to have a little think about it. Okay. And Jonathan, you made a really good point in the chat box a little while ago, that when you're experiencing a particular field, you might feel really confident handling a situation, but not preparing seems to have the ability to catch you out regardless of your experience. And this is so true. Feeling underprepared for something certainly makes us feel less confident, and it has a real direct impact on our work. Think about what actions you can take to be prepared for this event. So this is step 2 and step 3 kind of together. But let's think about step 2. What actions do you need to take prior to this to be your performative self? Perhaps it's going to be something you'll need to do that morning. Maybe you like to be, I'm a morning person, so I have to be in somewhere really nice and early. I like to be in before everyone else, get logged on, get my head down, and feel really productive in the morning. That sets me up in the right way for the day. If that works for you, then maybe you need to get into the office half an hour earlier before that big meeting, before that conversation. Think about what's going to help you be your performative self that day. And then step 3, consider actions that you are going to take during the event, which are going to help you with your confidence and success and a successful outcome. If you know you're a really emotional person, if you know that when you're nervous, you fidget, think about what you need to do When I first started training and I was nervous, I put my pen down. I was never allowed. It became a joke. I'm not allowed to have a pen in my hand. Always have free hands. Think about what it is for you when you're not feeling confident that you do. And perhaps it's really hard to recognize this in ourselves. Perhaps ask someone to help you with this. Sometimes someone close to you has a really good observation of things that you're not even aware of. Think about what you need to do during the event that will help you with confidence. And think about silly factors. So for example, I'm delivering today. A little tip I was given from our CEO, I have a smiley face above my camera. A, it reminds me to smile, and B, it reminds me to look at my camera when I'm talking. That might sound like a silly thing to other people, but that works for me. So think about what works for you. Okay, that brings us to the end of the session today, where I've obviously got 5 minutes now to take any questions. Would anyone like to just turn their mic on and ask any questions that they have, or just any self-reflections that you've got following that session? Okay. I'm going to go with silence as a good thing. Guys, if any of you have any questions following this event, my email address is down the screen. So as you can see, it's emily@citf.tech, and my contact number is on the email that I would have sent you all this morning. If any of you have got any questions at all, just ping me an email or give me a call, and it would be great to see, obviously, any feedback following this event. As you can see, we've got feedback that's just coming up on the screen now. If you can all just take a minute to complete the feedback that's on the screen, there's just a couple of questions there. Your feedback is so important to us, because obviously when we're doing these events, we need to make sure they're right for you guys, our members. So making sure that obviously the sessions that we're putting on are meeting your objectives, that they are ones that you would recommend to other people, and then also learning a little bit more about what you would like to see in the new year. So moving into 2021, I don't know about you guys, I'm very excited for a new year. So I will be sharing an email with you all afterwards, which will go into this feedback in a little bit more detail. And if you have got some time to complete it, it only takes a minute or two, that would be fantastic. If you don't, perhaps even if you just reply back to me with topics that you'd love to see kind of coming up in 2021 in the first quarter. Finally, guys, just to remind you all that I'm just gonna, here we are. Okay, I'm just going to remind you all that we have our Rita Awards, so the submissions are open. I know I've spoken to some of you maybe before about this, and please be mindful that entries close on the 2nd of February, and I don't know about you guys, but I know that it's really sneaking up on me quite fast. So new year, think about what submissions you need to get in, look at the categories. You can go onto our website and see everything about our Real IT Awards. It's a really big event, obviously happening in May, and the shortlist announcement is obviously, as you can see, down the 11th of March. So please make sure you don't miss your entries. If you've got a good entry, get it in by the 2nd of February so we can review it. If you need any help with that at all, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you so much for your time today, guys. It's been lovely to meet you all, and I will speak to you all soon.